Hey guys, KingRazzel here, and welcome to another episode of Coming Soon, this time for Paper Mario Color Splash. This game will be coming out on October the 7th, 1 month from today, and we're going to talk about it in terms of its story, gameplay, multiplayer, extras, and systems, before wrapping up with my overall thoughts. With that said, let's go ahead and get this started. The story of the game begins with Mario at his house on a stormy night when Toad and Princess Peach come knocking at his door. He answers the door and the two give Mario a letter, which is actually a folded up Toad who's been drained of all his color. The stamp on the letter points them to Prism Island, so Peach, Mario, and Toad set off for the island. Upon arrival, they find that the town square is deserted and much of the color has been drained. Toad splits off from Mario and Peach, and the two meet up with Huey, a new character, in a 3D paint bucket. The newly formed trio then hear a scream and head in that direction to find a shy guy sucking the color out of Toad. From here, you'll be searching the island in search of paint stars and trying to help the citizens of the world. Not much else is known about what happens in the story, however there are a few things that we can discern from some of the gameplay. For one thing, after the initial arrival on the island, Princess Peach is no longer seen in the ensuing gameplays, so I'd have to assume that she's either been taken by Bowser or holding down the fort back at Town Square. The second thing that seems relatively safe to assume is that Bowser will have something to do with this tale, since we do see two of the Koopalings, Morty and Iggy, in the later gameplay as boss battles. So one would assume that they're helping Bowser out, unless it's actually Bowser Jr. whom they're helping out, which also might make sense, since Bowser Jr. is always seen with a magic paintbrush, and this seems to fit in with the game pretty well. Gameplay is divided between exploration and combat. Let's talk about exploration first though. Paper Mario Color Splash seems to be set up like classic Mario games where you'll have an overworld where you'll select the stage you'd like to go to. From what we've seen, stages will be unlocked after you've collected a paint star from the previous stage. Once the stage is selected, you'll be set up in a 3D world made of paper. As you go around the world, you'll notice that there are lots of little places that are missing their color. In order to fill these places in, you'll need the use of your hammer. Your hammer has two main functions in these stages, including painting objects with the paint hammer and smacking objects with the regular hammer. Filling in these splotches will give you coins as well as cards, which are used for mainly combat. Stages seem to mainly center around minigames, platforming, and solving various puzzles in the environment, such as this. Or using the new cutout power like this.
Line up perfectly like that. I press the Y button. Everything shifts to the gamepad screen, and then I'm able to trace this dotted line on the gamepad screen with my finger. It's going to cut out that section of the environment, and it's going to allow me to do this kind of extra dimensional platforming. So Mario's that was obviously a super simple one.
These seem to be the main thing you'll be doing in the levels aside from combat, and speaking of combat, let's go ahead and talk about that next. For the most part, combat is focused around paint consumption and card play with timed button presses to maximize your damage output. A typical battle will start with you bumping into the enemy in the overworld. Depending on if you're first or not, you'll have to select your attack cards, and from what we know, there's basically going to be 4 types of attack cards, including basic attacks, healing cards, enemy cards, and thing cards, which are essentially super attacks. Basic attacks are things like hitting enemies with your hammer or stomping on them with your boot. These attacks can be enhanced by hitting the correct button at the correct time, and these will be your main source of damage for most fights. Health cards are pretty self-explanatory. They're things like mushrooms that will give you back certain amounts of your health. Enemy cards are earned by defeating enemies, and these will give you the ability to summon specific enemies to fight for you until they're knocked out. The final category of cards is thing cards. I'm not quite sure how you earn these cards, but according to Nintendo's E3 demonstration of the game, you'll squeeze an in-game object, and this object will become one of these cards. These cards are the most powerful things in Mario's arsenal, and each one has a special animation. Let me go ahead and show you guys one of my favorites that I've seen thus far. All these cards operate with paint, just like your hammer in the actual stage. You'll have to put paint into a card you've selected, and the amount of paint that you put into it dictates how powerful your attack will be for you. You can see the overall amount of paint that you have in the top left corner, and conservation of paint will be a fairly important factor in the game. You can pick up paint in the stage by smacking different objects, and they will give you different types of paint. From what I've seen, there will be no multiplayer for this game, unsurprisingly. For extras, I don't really have anything, and for systems, this being the Mario franchise, it will of course be an exclusive to the Wii U. As for my thoughts on the game, I haven't played a Paper Mario title since the Thousand Year Door, and from what I see, it looks like the franchise has changed significantly. From what I understand, the last game, Paper Mario Sticker Star, was poorly received by the fans, and they're worried that this game will follow in its footsteps, and that's pretty apparent if you see the dislike ratio from the original trailer. For me, I don't really know what to think about it. This game looks good, but there are some issues as to things I remember enjoying about the first few games that I just don't see in this one. First of all, the characters are just not very interesting in my opinion. By this I mean, does everyone in the world really have to be a Toad? I remember from the Thousand Year Door, there were so many interesting helpers you could have, like Goombella or Vivian, and with this game, it just seems to be pretty much Mario by himself going to be flying solo, aside from Huey the Paint Bucket, who doesn't really seem to be helping you in combat or anything like that. Secondly, the combat seems a bit lackluster with these painted card mechanics. Now granted, I can't really judge the system without getting my hands on it, but it just seems watered down with no progression to your actual character. Instead, I assume the game is just going to give you stronger cards as you get further in the game. In the Thousand Year Door, you first of all had more characters to control, like Vivian or Goombella again. Each of these characters had different movesets, and they could prove useful in different situations. But then you also had Mario with the ability to equip badges, which allowed you to actually customize your character and his abilities, which is something that I think this game is missing. That being said, again, I have not played this game, so some of these assessments may be inaccurate, and it's just some of the conclusions that I've drawn about the game by watching some of the gameplays and the trailers. On the plus side, though, the world does seem quite interesting with it being made of paper and all that, and this should open up some interesting possibilities with the environments. Alright guys, so that is all that I have to say about this game. I hope I was able to help you better understand what you'll be getting out of this game should you decide to pick it up. Personally, I am going to be getting this one on October the 7th when it does come out, and I will be doing a full review on it, so if you want to see my opinions on it after I've actually gotten to play the game, then be sure to stay tuned. The next coming soon episode that I plan on doing will be for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, which I'm really looking forward to, and that will come out on September the 25th. But anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.